Hi, LindaBauwin here from StampingWithLinda.com, your cardiologist since 1997, helping you create cards from the heart. Today is just a quick technique video, and we are going to do a fun watercolor background. I have got my Versamark pad, and I have put several photopolymer stamps on one block. That's a cool thing with photopolymer, that you can add several stamps. And I need to grab a piece of scrap paper here to be stamping on so I can stamp off. It is hard to see with Versamark where you have already stamped. Versamark is a wet ink, and then it allows your embossing powder to grab a hold of what you have stamped. Now, when it's on your paper, you can leave it on forever. It doesn't matter if it dries out. You do want to get that powder on right away, but once the powder's on, unless you tap it or brush against it, it'll just stay on your paper until you decide to heat set it. When I first started stamping, I didn't have an embossing gun, and I used my oven. I'd put them on a cookie sheet and put them through the oven. That was definitely time consuming, so it didn't take me long before I got my embossing gun. Now we're talking 21 years ago, so stamping was relatively new. So I've got my white embossing powder on there. Now I'm going to bring in my heat gun and heat set that. And sorry about the noise. You want to make sure that you, and I see my extension cord is not long enough for you to see the heat gun, and I apologize. So I'm going to be heating it. I'll bring the embossing gun over so that you can see it once it's done. The embossing powder looks like what I say laundry soap. When you put it on, first put it on your card, but when you go to emboss it, it turns a glossy shine. So I'll go ahead and show you that. I hope you can see it on the camera if you've never embossed before. You'll see up here we've got a glossiness and then powder look down here. So you want it to be glossy all over. And it just takes a minute. Usually a hairdryer does not get hot enough for you to emboss with. And I want to make sure I've got all those stars embossed good. Because if you don't, once you touch them, then that powder is going to flake off. So we're going to go ahead and unplug that embossing gun, and I want to bring it over so you can see if you don't know what an embossing gun looks like. And it's just a heat source. So we have done the embossing. Now what we're going to do is a watercolor wash. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Balmy Blue, my Night of Navy, and my Pacific Point. And if you have the old ink pads, classic ink pads from Stampin' Up, the cover has some give to it. So when you push, you get ink in your lid. With the newer pads, they're very tight, and you may need to take a few drops of your refill and drop in there so that you can get watercolor wash. I have got my aqua painter, and I'm simply just going to go over adding some water and just kind of brushing that color on. No rhyme nor reason. The more water you put on, the more your paper is going to curl. So you want to be careful and not add too much water, but enough to make it bleed through. I'm just going to grab some more. And what it does is it resist where you have put that embossing, so you have a really pretty background. Now this really goes well with when I showed you last week, the ombre stamping with the ink pads and markers. If you missed that, I will have a link on my blog, stampingwithlinda.com. There will be a link if you're watching in YouTube so that you can see how I got this ombre look. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just coloring your stamps with your marker. Just use the side of your stamp. We're going to color that stamp in and go ahead and stamp that down. Now I'm ready to assemble that card. Got a piece of Night of Navy. I'm going to add that white. Now this card is pretty saturated. You could use watercolor paper if you want. It'll give you less bubbling with your paper, but I kind of like the texture of the white cardstock once it has that water put on it. Have a piece of the balmy blue cardstock. Going to use that for my card base. Add that. And then I'm going to bring in that verse that I did. This just makes for a very fast Christmas card. We've got that. And there you have it. A fun watercolor and ombre look Christmas card. Hope you've enjoyed today's tips. Talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.